Obviously, you're a litigator, the court controls your schedule.
Yeah, they don't like my wellness time.
Right.
Apparently.
They don't like your well-being and your hobbies and your passion projects.
When I tell the clerk, I'm sorry, I can't do it then. That's during my wellness time.
Right.
I never typically get a response on that.
When you're driven, the need to accomplish a goal is relentless. Hard work and ambition compel you to do whatever's necessary. In my work as a personal injury trial lawyer for 18 years, it's common to meet driven people. Those with drive can have different personalities, careers, or backgrounds, but they possess one common factor. Despite their passions, driven people want to surround and motivate themselves with other driven people. If you want to learn how to overcome obstacles by learning from others, then tune in here. This is the Driven Crowd Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into episode 76 of the Driven Crowd Podcast, fueled by Snellings Law. I'm your host, Scott Snellings. Today, I'm joined by Brandy Wilson Edwards, attorney, motivational speaker, and well-being advocate. Brandy empowers people to be a zealous advocate for themselves while challenging them to pursue their potential and make courageous choices. Brandy is obsessed with personal development, a multi-passionate person. I love that word, multi-passionate, and professional. She's also a certified yoga coach and mindfulness coach. Her life mantra is be strong and courageous, which she encourages you to adopt and live with more courage and less regret. Brandy, welcome to the Driven Crowd Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here with you.
Absolutely. So give us a little bit of background on where you grew up and how you got to where you are.
I grew up in a lot of small towns.
Okay.
When I was younger, I moved around a lot. So by the time I graduated high school, it was my sixth school that I had attended.
Oh my gosh.
I'm really grateful for that experience now because I can talk to people easily and know how to make friends easily. I'm not scared to pick up and move somewhere new. So it was really great experience for me looking back, although it wasn't pleasant at the time.
Yeah.
An interesting memory, though, from middle school is I did public speaking, competitive public speaking. And then when I moved in middle school, they didn't have that program and I kind of just forgot about it. And so it's just interesting the things that we enjoy and that we're good at when we're a child, how it can really just make more sense when we start prioritizing that again as an adult, our strengths that come naturally to us. I enjoyed high school. I went to the University of North Texas for undergrad. I majored in criminal justice and I interned with the U.S. Marshals when I was in college, which is really cool, especially the security clearance, being able to walk in so young and had a really cool security clearance. That was fun. I went to law school out of state. I'm from Texas.
Okay.
So I went out of state. I knew I was coming back to Texas immediately to practice, but I went to Oklahoma City University School of Law.
Yeah. Interned
with the DA's office there. Moved to Dallas the second I graduated, and I've been here for many years practicing. And so that's a little bit about me and my younger days, I suppose.
Great. It's amazing how quickly time goes by, isn't it? I think it was last November, I celebrated 20 years of practice in law.
Congratulations.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
20 years. That just absolutely flew by. And it feels like it was about 5. Well, on some days it feels like it was about 5. On some days it feels like it's been 100.
Yeah.
But you know a lot about that. So tell me, let's talk burnout. Let's talk burnout. Let's get straight to one of your passions, and that's burnout. Because in the legal profession, especially, we see it all the time. I've been through it. I go through it in phases, and I think pretty much everyone, whether they're an attorney, whether they're a paralegal, a case manager, an admin, you hit burnout. A lot of it can be due to hours. A lot of it can be due to just the stress of the job. So, talk to us a little bit about burnout and your experiences with it.
Burnout affects more people than I think we realize. And you hit some important points on what causes burnout. Long hours, the stress, whether someone's in the legal profession or not, but we obviously both are in a stressful the legal profession is stressful. My personal experience with burnout was from unfulfillment. And I feel like that is often overlooked when people think about burnout, especially if you have a good work schedule. Some people might think, well, maybe I'm just unhappy, but really that unhappiness is from unfulfillment. If you're not doing something that you love, and maybe people don't wake up loving what they do every single day, even if they're passionate about what they do, because work at the end of the day is work.
Sure.
But I think it's important to have fulfillment with what you're doing. And that was really just how mine started, because I was interested in criminal law in undergrad as well as law school. And I didn't find myself practicing criminal law. And about 5 years into practicing, I was unhappy, and how people cope with their unhappiness and their unfulfillment results in a variety of different things. Mine was increased drinking, living for the weekends, dreading Monday. And that was for a few years of just rinse, repeat on autopilot, feeling really stuck. And I also realized I could start over and go into a different practice area and pursue criminal law, but I realized my dreams were changing and I didn't know exactly what that was. And while I was exploring my desire for change and something different, I was reading personal development books. I was attending events that had nothing to do with the legal space whatsoever. And there was a speaker that I heard. It was actually at a conference in Dallas for women entrepreneurs. And she said, sometimes a dream has to die for another one to be born. And so it was in that moment I really gave myself permission to figure things out. And I ended up staying at the same law firm. I've been there over 13 years, but I started to take action and explore what is missing and how can I find some more fulfillment. That's how I found my love for speaking and inspiring others to pursue their potential. And interestingly, once I had happiness outside of work, I was happy at the beginning because it was new and I was learning.
Sure, yeah.
But just over time, I'm not a person that likes to sit behind a computer all day. I'm a people person. I thought I was going to be in litigation. And so the speaking and the fulfillment that I found from that actually allowed me to find more happiness at work and realizing I do enjoy reviewing contracts and explaining provisions to my clients. So burnout is a symptom of something more, and it's a sign. And if anyone listening and your listeners, they don't have to settle. They can choose to do something about it. And I think what happens often, especially with attorneys, and when people are stressed and burned out, they just accept this is what it is. This is how life is going to be. Everybody's stressed. Everybody's burned out. Everybody's unhappy. And that is not true. Like, you get to create a life that you love waking up to every single day. You take control of your life with your choices. So I'm a big advocate of passion projects and hobbies and happiness outside of what you do for work, even if you love what you do. But burnout, it's something that, especially how we cope with it too, is a big factor, I think, into whether you overcome burnout or it becomes a slippery slope to something else.
So let's talk about that point of passion projects, hobbies, et cetera. So, especially in the legal profession, and this is going to be kind of based off the legal profession because that's where I've spent my entire career. Work is very time consuming. And then you go home. If you're married, you have kids, you tend to your family, you play with your kids, you hang out with them. On the weekends, especially around these parts, it's usually pretty full of sports or some sort of activity for the kids. How do you carve out the time to find a hobby or passion project? And if you don't have one, how do you go about identifying what could be that thing that fills your cup?
So answering the second question first.
Yeah, I always like to ask multiple questions at once. So you got to remember all of them.
Yeah. So answering the second question is, if you're not sure what you might enjoy doing, is just experiment. And my best advice is try new things and detach from the outcome. Especially in our profession where we want to be perfect at everything. And if we're not great at it, well, then we're not making time for it. Is just start exploring what it is that makes you happy. Date yourself, figure out, what do I like? What makes me happy? And, thinking back to when I was a kid and I did the competitive public speaking, that's something I forgot for so long. So think about to your childhood, what brought you joy? What were your goals and what were your dreams? Or what things did you enjoy doing? What classes did you enjoy? I loved my art class when I was younger. And over the past few years, I've started painting abstract art. I have no technical training. I just get a canvas out and paint, and I paint what I'm thinking or I'm feeling. And the beautiful thing about abstract art is it doesn't have to look like anything.
Yeah.
So if I were to try to paint or draw a portrait of someone, that's not going to come out very well. But abstract art, there's really no rules. And that is something that I enjoy outside of, all the other things that I do. So just giving yourself permission to explore, detach from the outcome. As far as your first question and making time for the hobbies, the passion projects, is you have to become your most important client. It's easy to, and we're taught to prioritize everyone's emergencies, what everybody else needs from you, whether it's clients at work or family, friends, and things that other people need. But you have to become your most important client and make yourself a priority, not an option. Make your happiness and your well-being a non-negotiable. And so it is not accepting, I do not have the time. It's you're not making time for something. You have control of your schedule, all things considered.
Sure.
Obviously, if you're a litigator, the court controls your schedule.
Yeah, they don't like my wellness time.
Right.
Apparently.
They don't like your well-being and your hobbies and your passion projects.
When I tell the clerk, I'm sorry, I can't do it then. That's during my wellness time.
Right.
I never typically get a response on that.
So you might have to prioritize it outside of, normal working hours. But making the time, because if you shift your mindset from, I don't have time for that, to I'm not making that a priority, it feels different. And so it's just balancing. You don't have to do everything at once. I feel like I can be all or nothing, 0 or 100. And I feel like a lot of attorneys can, a lot of your listeners can. They're ambitious and they're driven. And so maybe not even feeling like you have to have a full hour to it. 10 minutes, 15 minutes here and there. It all compounds over time. And just strategically designing your schedule gradually. So maybe it's once a month you could start, not even once a week.
I think the detaching yourself from the outcome is one of the hardest parts of it, right? It's, wanting to go take up golf and expecting to start out, shooting in the 70s or 80s. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But at the same time, it's incredibly frustrating whenever you can't hit a straight shot to save your life. And no matter how hard we try to be, cognizant of the fact, like, look, this is going to be bad. I'm going to be really bad at this. I'm going to pick up a guitar. I don't know what I'm doing. It's going to sound terrible. But we want to see progress so fast, right? Especially for those of us who are kind of have this type of personality where we're driven to go excel at anything and everything we do. It's almost, you got to find something where, you know what? I don't really care if I excel at this. I just want to enjoy the thing, whatever it is. I want to be outside. I want to walk the golf course. I want to, see if I can get better. If I can't, okay, so be it. I've always heard people say, hey, a bad day at golf is better than a really good day at the office.
Yes.
And I don't know, I haven't really played that much golf, but I think it's changing that mindset and pursuing something just for the joy of actually doing it and not to go get really good at it.
It's enjoying the experience, the journey, and not being focused on the destination. So you gave different examples of someone maybe picking up the guitar and playing. And so if it's something that you want to learn or try, it doesn't mean you have to be great at it, that you expect to be on stage and the next best recording artist, but something that you are enjoying just because of the experience. And the amazing thing about all of the examples you gave is I think it's great to celebrate yourself for trying, because a lot of people don't try new things. And a lot of people are scared of failure. And whether that's private failure, where you try something you're just not good at, or failing in public. But I think not trying is failure, because failure means you can improve. If you're trying, you can improve, you can get better. And you can also change your mind if you decide you don't like something. You don't have to be great at it. But just giving yourself permission to try and explore and enjoy the journey. Back to art. I don't really have anything in mind when I start. And sometimes at the end, I love the painting. And sometimes I don't. I'm like, this is not good. I don't really like it. And I will actually still post those on LinkedIn. I don't always say that I don't like it. I just put it out there because it's what I created. But I have shared at different times, I share art that I don't really like or love, and I'll paint over it. But I enjoyed the process.
Yeah.
And that's an aspect of mindfulness and being present, is just enjoying the process and not so focused on the outcome.
All right. So you just mentioned an incredibly important word, which is, several, but the one I'm focusing in on is presence. I just talked with Charlie Mann, who listeners may recognize. He's my business coach and has been on the podcast a couple of times, but I was just on his podcast last week talking about being present and my struggles with that. So talk to us a little bit about the importance of being present as it relates to your overall wellness, and then some different ways to try and work on kind of living in the present as opposed to the past or obviously the future.
2 questions in one.
Right. I'm just knocking them all out at once.
I like your style.
And then I'll let you just go.
So presence, just practical application of it now in the moment. I am doing my best to really be present and listen to what you're saying, because I don't know what question you're going to ask. But it's easy for us to think in advance, and I'm human. Sometimes I catch myself doing it of what could I say? You're saying something and my brain is 5 steps ahead of my response. And I try to tone that down and decide, no, I'm going to listen and decide where this is going. So that's just one aspect of how I'm trying to be present in the moment right now. But presence is also not perfection. We always, I think, can think of it as if I feel distracted or if I have a thought come into my mind when I'm trying to listen to a conversation or do a meditation. A lot of people think of mindfulness and presence as that, but there's so many ways to be present in everyday life. So being present is really just noticing what is happening, acknowledging what is happening either around us or in our minds, and then redirecting our attention back to the present moment. And it's kind of like clouds passing by where you could notice it and you bring yourself back to the present moment. You asked 2 questions, so I feel like I answered one. One was maybe how I practice.
How presence relates to well-being, and then some different ways that you can focus on kind of developing your ability to be present.
So being present and how it applies and helps our well-being is, I feel like many professionals, we can multitask and we feel like we're being more productive that way. But if we just focus and we're present on one thing at a time or one task at a time, we're more productive and can make more progress. But being present in the moment can help our well-being by really acknowledging our emotions, because we can get caught up with if someone frustrates us or we are upset about something in traffic or, just different things in throughout our days. We have emotions where they're going up and down. And if we can be present and notice our emotions, notice what's causing it, and then redirect our attention to the present moment and how we want to feel and how we want to show up, how we want to respond instead of how we want to react, I think that can really help our overall well-being as far as our mindset about the situation or the circumstance. And I think that's my response to that first question.
Okay, sure. So what are some different ways outside of actually focusing on, trying to be present, catching yourself wandering away, like, nope, bring it back here. What are some other ways that you can think of to really help us stay present and exactly what it is that we're doing, right? So these things, I'm holding up my phone right now. These are terrible for being present. I don't think I'm not wearing my Apple Watch today. That's terrible for being present. Anytime something buzzes or beeps or whatever, it immediately has my attention, no matter how hard I try. Like Pavlov's dog with anything that buzzes or beeps. And so putting that on grayscale, that has helped me immensely because it's really hard to look at. If I look at it for too long on grayscale, it gives me a headache. So I don't want to look at it. What are some things like that you've found helpful in kind of in your journey to become more present?
I would say with respect to the phone in general is I keep my phone on silent and then I have emergency contacts on bypass. So, if maybe you want to be focused during the day and you want to put certain coworkers or colleagues on like the emergency bypass so that if they do call, then maybe you'll take it. But just having different features that you can utilize on your phone so you can do work uninterrupted. I'm not really big into time blocking, but I know that is really helpful for some people as far as staying focused on a task of from 10 to 2, they're doing this, 2 to 4, it's this type of activity, or maybe they're checking their emails at certain times. But it's just really trying to remove our distractions, which we're not going to always be distraction free.
Yeah. I know for me, I'm one of those that time blocking really helps because otherwise I'm scatter shooting the entire day. I'm answering questions, I'm responding to emails, I'm doing this, and then I get completely pulled off track. And especially when I have things like bigger projects I need to get done, right? Like review motions or draft pleadings or whatever it is that takes extreme concentration, I almost have to get out of the office. And I feel like when I'm out of the office, it changes my mindset. And then I've also blocked out like Q&A time every single day. And so we have a meeting at 4:00, a Zoom with the attorneys, and any questions that happen to come up that day, that's where we talk about them. And we're all on there so everybody can learn from each other. And then that's really cut down on the time throughout the day where everybody's asking each other questions, right? Because it's so easy with things like Slack or Teams to, I have this question, I'm going to put it out there. And as attorneys, we like to get immediate answers.
Yes. Yes.
We've been placated to think that we can get immediate answers on everything. And we get frustrated when we don't, right? And so it's really hard to move on. But if you know that you have a Q&A time, hey, just put this question over here, create your list for the day, and then we knock them all out. So yeah, those are some things that have really worked for me. That being said, it's really, really hard for me to turn off work stuff when I leave the office. You have any suggestions or tricks for that?
Well, that is going to depend. It's going to be different for everyone, what works for everyone. But I think a walk is the power of just a walk outside, whether it's around the block or a mile or two, is just underestimated the power of it. And years ago, if I was stressed or overwhelmed, I would go walk on Katy Trail, about 4 miles. And I felt so much better. Just being outside in nature is so therapeutic. But I would always listen to podcasts because I was always trying to multitask. Let me walk and get steps. Let me de-stress. Let me also learn and get this book and this podcast. And there was a point where I felt like I was just consumed with so much information between all the books I was reading and the podcasts from learning that I just decided I'm just going to start walking without any of it. And so maybe you start out walking to podcasts or music or things like that, but maybe gradually transitioning to just being with your thoughts and not having the distractions of the podcast or the music or talking on the phone. I used to call family or friends as well, like walk and talks.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to notice what you start thinking and how you start processing things instead of avoiding it or feeling like I'll get to it later, or problems that you can work through, solutions that you can find. And then also just noticing what's around you, where you're taking time to be present, and maybe you start to see things around that you didn't see before. You start to appreciate things around you that you didn't appreciate before. So that could be a good way to try to turn off leaving the office is once you get home, is maybe you just do a walk to clear your head and also get some movement in.
Yeah. I tell you what, over the last couple of years, I have had more and more drives to from work, drive to the podcast studio with nothing on, with no music. Part of it is either trying to get into the right mental state for doing whatever I'm doing, but a lot of it is just time to just kind of sit there and not consume information, right? We're in a culture where we can consume information 24 hours a day for the rest of our lives and not get anywhere near all of the information consumed. And so, I think actually just giving your brain time to process, where there's no mental load there, right? You're not trying to prepare for something in your head. You're not rehearsing something. You're not doing X, Y, Z. You're just kind of letting your mind sit there. Things come up. It's never just staring out the window and watching cars go by.
Right.
Your brain will find the things that it needs to think about. And Charlie taught me this trick too, is, at the end of the day, build in some quiet time before you go to sleep to kind of bring up, hey, what's something that I want my brain working on overnight? Think about that and say, okay, just kind of give it to your subconscious. I don't really know how that works, but it does seem to work. I can't tell you how many times I've woken up with ideas on those problems that I was thinking about before I went to bed. So there's something there to that, for sure.
Well, and if you want to, some people take it a step further, and for your listeners that, they're goal oriented and ambitious, is some people review their goals or their dreams or different things that they're working on before, or maybe it's even their vision board. If they create a vision board, looking at that so that it's kind of the similar concept, so that your brain is thinking about that and visualizing it and dreaming about it as well, and making it seem a little bit closer to reality.
Yeah. Yeah. The subconscious is crazy powerful. All right. So let's kind of change focus and back on you. you found this passion for speaking. You found it back in 6th grade, 5th grade, whenever you were doing it competitively. And then you kind of buried that down because the program wasn't there anymore. When you found that again, how did you go about pursuing that passion?
It started, it all evolved organically because I was posting inspirational and motivational content online for years before I started speaking. And then I just developed a following, and it was incredible to post something and then have people either comment or message me privately saying, thank you so much for sharing that. They felt seen or heard, or they felt like they were going through it as well, or they felt inspired and they took action. And so it was through positive reinforcement with the inspirational stuff that I was doing on other platforms before I started doing the same thing on LinkedIn. I knew that I wanted to take it offline. And so I started hosting some events. I actually booked myself for my first speaking event, and I hosted my own workshop, which was so...
How was the pay there?
It was not great, but I did not do it for free. And a lot of people in the marketing world might suggest the first time you're doing something, if you want to see if people are interested, maybe do it for free, see how people show up, how many people, I feel like a lot of people are not invested in free, especially because there's so much stuff for free online these days. But I decided, no, we're going to pay for this because it took a lot of time and effort into organizing it, preparing it. So that was fun. And then I was just attending a lot of events and personal development events, conferences, and nothing legal related. It was all for entrepreneurs or people running their own businesses. Essentially, I feel like were a lot of the events that I was attending, just because a lot of the speakers that I wanted to hear, because I read their books, they were speaking at those types of conferences as keynote speakers. So every time I went to these events, I would be so inspired by these speakers because I would have this shift, either a mindset shift or I took action and got results afterwards. And because I was inspired, I was taking inspired action, and I loved the impact that I felt as an audience member. And I thought, I want to do that. I want to be on stage to inspire people and make a positive impact so people really pursue their potential, both personally and professionally. So that's how it started. And I didn't know anything about professional speaking. I just told everybody that I wanted to do it. And that is the power of sharing your goals and dreams with people. Some people might have the mindset of keep it private and not share. But if you're not sharing what you want to do, people aren't going to know how to help you. People aren't going to know who to introduce you to. People aren't going to know that you were available for certain opportunities. And so I just told people that's what I wanted to do, got my first keynote, and then I celebrated myself on social media because I was really proud. But it was to show other people what was possible and take them along with me in the journey of here's what you can do. If you have a dream, you can start small. And I celebrated the first keynote, the first retreat I hosted, the first podcast that I did, the first in-person podcast interview, the first conference that had a different audience, the first big stage. So I was sharing all of that online. And I just figured it out as I went. And that was the beautiful thing, is I didn't know what I didn't know. And then I realized once I started to learn the business of it, then that's where the imposter syndrome can start.
Oh, yeah.
Because I didn't have anything to compare it to. Really, I feel like when I started, as far as speakers on my level, when I was newer. But it's been a great journey. And for your listeners, like you and I were discussing right before the show, is when I first started speaking, I thought I had to choose between being an attorney or a speaker. I thought they had to be separate. And then at a certain point, I just realized I can be both. I don't have to choose one or the other. And that's where the multi-passionate part comes in. I can be many different things. Your listeners can be many different things. We don't have to fit into this box that makes it easy for people to understand. And our identity is so much more than how we make money with our profession. You can be multi-passionate professional as well as a multi-passionate person.
And so for people who say, you know what, I want to be a speaker. That sounds like a really cool life. I want to be up on stage. I want to be under the lights. I have no idea what I could talk about. What would you say to them in terms of content that they could bring that would be helpful? Because when you kind of look at what's already out there, like, oh my gosh, there's millions of motivational speakers. How can I possibly have something new to add to that? Or millions of speakers on whatever topic. It seems like they're already all out there. So how do you look at that and say, okay, here's what I can bring that's unique?
Well, first, I would remind everyone that their perspective is what makes them unique, because you could have, various speakers, and I, myself included. I have a failure story. I have, different things where your audience can relate to it, but everybody fails in a different way. You fail at doing something differently. And so the best advice as far as figuring out what you might want to speak about is asking yourself, what do you need to hear right now? Or what did the younger version of yourself need to hear? And then also, what does the future version of yourself need to hear? So if you take that approach of what does the younger version, the present version, and the future version of myself need to hear, you are going to relate with people. And it takes time to figure out your audience and kind of perfect your talking points and your takeaways and the stories you want to share to illustrate all of that. But I think your listeners can apply that even if they're not wanting to be a speaker on stage, is if they're writing a post on social media, if they want to write a book, if they want to start a podcast, what did you need to hear, or what do you need to hear? And I feel like that gives you so much insight into things that you can talk about, that you have personal experience from, and it's your perspective that makes it unique.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the biggest point, right? Your perspective, because nobody's lived your life but you. And we all have different worldviews, right? We all grew up in different places. We're raised different ways, have different educational backgrounds. And so while one person can bring forth a framework, how that framework applies to you can be totally different than how it applies to somebody else. So I love that. Really focusing on your unique perspective, building it out with stories, right? You mentioned figuring out which stories you want to share, which stories apply. And it's funny too, because we all kind of have those handful of stories that we go back to in various situations, and we use them in various ways. And those are your foundational building blocks, right? Because they're important to you for a reason. Either they're funny, either they're pivotal, or some other aspect of you. And so just start with those stories and figure out, okay, well, what's a common thread in these stories? Or how are these stories, how did these stories define who I am today? And so I think those are really, really cool perspectives. All right. So how did you go from, I want to do this, to where you are today? Did you have any coaching along the way, or how did you learn to up your speaking game?
I have invested in various masterminds, which I think are so important, to surround yourself with like-minded and ambitious people, specifically those that have done a lot more than you have, so that you're not the smartest person in the room and you can learn from others. I read a lot of books and I've figured a lot of stuff out. I also, when I'm at speaking events, I would pay attention to what did I like about the speaker? What did I maybe not like? Or how did I like their approach? Or how would I do it differently? Or was there a spot where I felt like they lost the audience or they lost me? And just making kind of mental notes and incorporating some of that into my speaking engagements. But for the most part, I've figured a lot out on my own, and then just surrounded myself with people, networking and collaborating with people, seeing other professional speakers as opportunities for collaboration, not competition. And a lot of people are very helpful when you reach out and ask a question, or, want a meeting. Not everybody has an abundance mindset though. So, it's been a really, really fun journey.
And it's amazing the number of amazing speakers that you can find on YouTube. I mean, their speeches are out there. Pretty much all of the TED Talks are out there, and you can find and learn from various people and find speakers that you really like and want to emulate. Okay, so time for one last question here. Okay. You've mentioned several books as we've been going, so I'm going to ask you, give me your top 3 books that you would recommend.
Top 3 books. The Alchemist.
Yeah,
I think it's great.
Yeah, I did the audiobook of that, which was really good.
I like that book. It's for your listeners who want just a little synopsis of what it is. It's about a young boy on a search for a treasure. He meets all these people along the way and learns a lot about himself. And these people that he meets really have wisdom to offer that he can apply in his life. And then on kind of like a similar book, have you read The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari? It's about an attorney. You have to read that.
Okay.
It's very similar to The Alchemist, and it's about an attorney on his search for fulfillment. I need to reread that one now that I'm bringing that up. It's so good. Another book that I really enjoyed reading was let's see, what was the title? Can You Really Think and Grow Rich? Have you read
Napoleon Hill's original Think and Grow Rich?
Right. So it was based on their original book, Think and Grow Rich. And the author passed away a few years ago. His name's Ramy, R-A-M-Y. I can't remember his last name, but he basically applied what he learned in Napoleon Hill's book. And his quest was, can you really think and grow rich? And I really liked reading his book. I read it first before Napoleon's because it felt more current and relevant and very actionable. And he really did. So he started out from nothing and became a billionaire. So I found that book to be really helpful for both personal and professional development. So I've shared 3. So those would be 3 books. I read all the time. I'm constantly ordering books on Amazon.
Oh, you and me both.
And I love going to the half price books over here off Northwest Highway.
It's massive.
It is. It's massive. And I love going in with no agenda and just seeing what books find me. And I always probably leave with at least 10.
One of my favorite smells in the world is walking into that half price books. You just smell all the old books in there, and that's one of my happy places for sure.
We might run into each other on the weekends there sometime. Go get a coffee, go book shopping.
It's a pretty good little morning right there.
It is.
Pretty good morning. Awesome. Well, Brandi, thank you so much for your time. Really a pleasure having you today. And thank you everyone for tuning in to another episode of the Driven Crowd Podcast.